Hi, this is Mollie O'Brien, just calling in to say many, many happy returns to John Broughton on 20 years of retrospectives on 3SER Radio Casey. Congratulations, John.
Were you a keen student of music growing up, taking in as many styles as you could? One would assume you were.
I did. I grew up in a fairly small town in West Virginia, which is a pretty rural state, although the town I grew up in is about 50 miles west of a fairly big city in Pennsylvania, and so we would go there. My mother would take me to Pittsburgh to see. I saw the Beatles in 1964, and then we'd go to hear opera and anything that wasn't available in our little town. Our little town did have a symphony, though, and I went pretty much to every concert there. I saw whatever I could that came through growing up. Luckily, there was one of the great old time music halls in Wheeling, West Virginia. Probably was a movie theater, one of those that was built in the 30s and the 20s. I think it probably was built in the 30s actually. And the road shows like Duke Ellington and Count Basie, Ray Charles, people like that would come through and do one-nighters, and we generally were able to go see all of them too, which was really exciting.
I guess you would have also been growing up and developing an interest in music around the time of that great folk revival in the 60s as well. Was that an important era of music for you?
Oh, yes, that was a very, very important era, especially in church, because we went to our local Catholic grade school, and that was starting to happen about then, the whole folk revival, and there were folk masses, which that was when the Catholic Church decided it was okay to say Mass in English, and we had a really strong youth group in that church, and we did lots of singing lots of singing at church every week with them, and through high school too. So. It's, I didn't come up in the gospel tradition that way in church, but the folk era, the folk scare, as they say.
Illegal.
Yeah.
Now, you had ambitions for a stage career, I believe, and went to New York to pursue that.
I did.
How far did it get?
Not very far. I loved doing theater and musical comedy, especially. And I had 2 years of college and just wasn't happy doing it. And I think what I just really, really wanted to do was just go live in New York, because it was about as different as you could get from from where I was. And so I thought, I'll just go to auditions, and it'll be a piece of cake. Well, it's pretty difficult, and I realized I was not the actress that the competition was, and so that's when I realized I should just stick to the singing thing, and the whole thing with Broadway with the union and equity and all that stuff. It's vastly different than just being a singer. So I realized pretty quickly that was not going to be my forte. But I stuck it out there for a few years, and I had a job, and I sang whenever I could there, which wasn't too often, because I didn't really know too many people in New York, and it's a hard city to then it was anyway. At age 19, it was hard for me to really find the people I needed to find. So I had to move away from there.
Now, there was a band called the Prosperity Jazz Band, which you got involved with not long after that. Yep. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that was a band that was formed in 1980 here in Colorado, and it consisted of a great guitar player named Barbecue Bob, who named himself after the old blues guy. His real name was Don DeBacker, and really incredible guitar player. A piano player named Otto Koch, who was another wonderful jazz player and very much into the old style of the 30s and 40s swing music. And we had a bass player, Larry Wooster, and then the other, really the centerpiece of the whole band was a guy named Washboard Chaz, who provided all the percussion, and we really worked hard on our arrangements and had great, we picked great old tunes and lots of 3-part harmonies and 4-part harmonies, and we had a pretty good following around Colorado and had a great time, and it was a wild time actually with those guys. We almost sort of burn out, as it were. Luckily, that didn't quite happen, and we reined ourselves in and knew that we were destined to break up as a band, and we all went off and did other things. But we had a really fun time.
In general, what was the music scene like in Colorado when you first got there? Did you have any preconceived notions what to expect?
Well, I kind of knew that it was a good, thriving acoustic scene, and country music, for sure. That was really, really good country scene at that time. There were lots of gigs to be had, and we... in Prosperity, we managed to weasel our way into these country gigs. They said, "Oh, it's okay. It's Washboard Chaz and Mollie. We'll let them come and play an off night in the country bars." So we did that. We were the novelty act at sort of country festivals. But a really healthy scene as far as if you were wanting to make a living playing music in Colorado, you could do a whole circuit every month and be working 4 or 5 nights a week, and have a pretty well gainfully employed. I mean, not racking too much money in, but it was a decent living. And I think with the advent of of course, here in Colorado, the economy kind of fell through, and the bottom dropped out of the oil market, and that kind of set everything into a tailspin, and clubs closed right and left, and there was by the end of the 80s, it was pretty slim pickings. So, but by then I was having kids, and I wasn't traveling too much anyway, so...
Do you think your music now would be as diverse as it is now if had you not moved around so much in your younger years? Has your environment influenced your music?
Yes, to a degree. I heard a lot of jazz in New York, and when I moved out here, I heard a lot of bluegrass naturally, because it was a big thriving offshoot of the country scene. And of course, my brother was real involved with Hot Rise then, and I picked up on that, and Tim and I also made a few records in the 80s that are bluegrass, old-timey style of music, and yes, I think definitely my environment has influenced me.
Yeah.
But I am I just love all kinds of stuff, and luckily, we have fabulous radio stations here, public radio especially, and there's a really great one in Boulder that plays all kinds of things that I never would have heard had I stayed in West Virginia. Best thing I ever did was move out of there. I can't tell my parents that, but...
You mentioned those albums you did with Tim, and there really is a special feel when siblings play music together. Have you always felt that from day one with him?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Always, yeah. I mean, it was just a natural thing that we would... Of course, we're so close in age, it was a natural thing for us we were interested in the same kind of music pretty much at the same time growing up, and, we'd teach each other songs, and it was just a natural course of events for us to sing together, and it just came incredibly easy to us, like it does, I'm sure, to most siblings that enjoy singing, even if you're not professional singers, or just as an easy way that you have when you're with someone you've known all your life, and you're not afraid to try out different things. I really think that's true. Plus the whole genetic thing of the genetic patterns of the vocal sounds, that really make for a great blend. So.
When he moved on to Nashville, I guess the scene was set for you to establish yourself as a solo artist. Do you think you would have been looking towards a solo career anyway, had he not moved away? Was it something you
I think so, yeah. We were definitely moving that way. And I all along had my own bands. And when Tim and I were making our records, I had an R&B band here called the Blue Tips. And the Tim and Mollie stuff took off so much, it was so well received that it just seemed like the right thing to do, to go off for a few years and work with him. And the band I had here was a 7-piece band. It was kind of cumbersome to travel with, but all along I had my solo stuff happening and tried to do a lot of different things solo wise.
So it definitely.
Excuse me.
No, go ahead. No.
The Tim and Mollie stuff was just, I think we would tag along, they would add a Tim and Mollie set on to a lot of festivals where Hot Rize was playing, and that's how we got fairly well known, doing our stuff that way. And as I said, the music was well received on the radio stations here, so it definitely was a big career boost for me, though, doing Tim and Mollie.
I believe Tim was instrumental in getting you over to Sugar Hill Records, is that right?
Yes, he was, yeah. Yeah, they asked him to make a record of duets. They wanted a kind of a record in the manner of the Skaggs and Rice record that came out, oh my gosh, I think the early 80s, late 70s, maybe, I can't remember exactly when. And they wanted to do another duet. They wanted Tim to do another duet album. And Tim suggested me, and they didn't know anything about me, and they were a little skeptical, I think, at first. But once they heard the demos that we sent them, they really liked it. And the thing that people really enjoyed about Tim and Mollie was that they could sing a third part along with us easily, and people just love to sing, and it's a human nature thing to want to add in your own part, and the Tim and Mollie records made that possible for so many people.
When you started recording your own records, were you particularly conscious of not wanting to sound too much like the old duo records, like trying to show another side to yourself? In other words, not to be typecast as that folky bluegrass sound?
Well, I tried not to sound. I think by the time I started recording my own CDs, I pretty much had established my own sound. I think a lot of people hear a white woman singing blues and they say, "Oh, you remind me of Bonnie Raitt." I get that a lot, and I know I don't sound like Bonnie Raitt. I may do tunes in the same style that she does, and then people may tend to think, they may misinterpret that to mean that I'm singing like Bonnie, but I don't think I sound anything like her. And by the time I started recording, I was definitely into my own style, I think, but I really hit it. I recorded 2 CDs on my own before I ever did the Tim and Mollie stuff, and those are R&B and jazz covers. And at that point, I was still defining my own style. Once I worked with Tim and realized that I could define myself within that Tim and Mollie sound as being the one that brought the blues and the jazz tinges to the country stylings of Tim and Mollie. That's when I realized I could really do a lot of different things, so if that makes sense.
If there'd be any one label one could put on your music or on yourself as a performer, I would say a song interpreter. Is that a comfortable role for you?
Yes, very much so. I'm not. It's problematic sometimes. People want you to be a songwriter and they want you to stick to one genre, and it's problematic in that they want to pigeonhole you for a certain radio programming or a certain style of music at a festival. And people, I think, finally have learned that I'm not to be pigeonholed, and that I'm, as you say, an interpreter, and I'm really happy to be thought of that way. I'm not a songwriter, and there's lots of fine singers who've come before us who didn't write either, and I think that it's a tradition that we tend to overlook these days in these days of massive amounts of quote-unquote singer-songwriters. There's a lot of stuff out there that is easily recorded because of technology available today, and I think that a lot of people if they were coming up in the old days, might not have made the cut because they're either their tunes aren't that great, or they're not engaging performers or good singers. I think I don't want to sound like I'm bad-mouthing the whole singer-songwriter thing, but I think that it's certainly a vast group of people out there doing that kind of thing, and so I think in a way I kind of stand out a little bit from the crowd that way, because I'm not trying to write songs and do what everyone else does.
It is something of forgotten art form, really, isn't it, the song interpreter, which is a shame.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's people like Harry Connick, he's somebody that's a great band leader, arranger, great singer, though, a great interpreter. And, of course, all the jazz singers, there's a wealth of music to pick from, of songs to pick from that lend themselves to any kind of arranging, and it seems like a sin not to keep trying to pull those gems out of the repertoire and perform them.
Do you know straight away if a song is just right for you, or does it take a few hearings?
Oh, it takes a few hearings. Sometimes I'll hear something immediately and decide that it's gonna be perfect. Sometimes I think something's perfect and then it isn't. So it just depends, and it also depends on how you are arranging it too. I do believe some tunes lend themselves to a duo. If I've recorded it with a band and I decide to do it with a guitar player, some tunes automatically work no matter what. But sometimes they don't. It's pretty rare for something not to work in most settings. A good song is a good song is a good song. It's all in the hands of the singer, I think, and if you can sing it well, then it works in any setting.
Is there an arrangement procedure you go through, or does it really depend on the song?
Oh, it depends on the song, really. It seems lately that I've arranged tunes for recordings, and oftentimes it kind of just comes up, kind of happens in the studio. You have a basic outline of how you want the song to go, and maybe some bass lines and that kind of thing, but then it generally kind of comes together in the studio while you're rehearsing, you run through the song 3 or 4 times before you lay the tracks down, and that seems to be a good way to work while you're hearing it really well that way in the headphones and that kind of thing. So
yeah. I read a quote where you said you try to make a point of never performing the same song the same way twice. Do you plan ahead for that type of thing, the altered arrangements of the songs, or are they more a spur-of-the-moment type thing?
It's spur-of-the-moment, and it's my redoing, not the band's, but it's definitely mine, my doing. I think that if I'm tired, I may rely on singing it sort of in the same manner, the same melody. I tend to change if I'm feeling good. For instance, I just came from the last couple of weeks. I've been really sick, and I had to sing through horrible cold and laryngitis and something I never really had happened to me for that long of a period of time, and and ended up having to change all the keys on all the songs so I could croak them out. And I narrowed my range in each song because I knew I was pretty limited because of being sick. And it worked. Most of the tunes worked, and I was able to adapt to that kind of a thing. If I'm feeling great, I'll maybe tell the band during the song I'm going to sing this same thing, sing through the 32 bars 3 times, and try to be like Ella Fitzgerald and sing the same lyrics over and over and over, but a completely different melody every time. It just depends on the setting.
Now, we've already covered how your music has covered such a broad spectrum of styles over the years. If you had to pin it down to one style, what would be your first musical love?
Well, I guess probably the folk tradition, because those are such great standard songs, really tried and true, well-tested songs that can be done so many different ways that there's just a great vast amount of tunes to pick from, and you can't ever go wrong with some of this old traditional tunes.
Has it worked against you being as diverse as you are musically, in terms of reviewers not knowing how to classify you, and radio, as you mentioned before, radio programmers not knowing where to slot you in?
Is it what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Has it worked against you at all, do you think?
In a way, I suppose, because I'm not able, they're not able to, push me, as we say, into the, under the, what am I trying to say? I'm not, in the radio, in the record stores, I'm listed under folk. However, a lot of my tunes are, could be played on a jazz radio station, and I think that if a jazz radio station here perhaps were to receive a CD from Sugar Hill Records, and they were, say, suggesting certain cuts to play because they were jazz tunes, I think that unless they knew who I was, they would, that would be in the bin that got tossed out. They wouldn't even give it a second thought. And I think so. But at the same time, I don't really care about that. I have a great audience of people that are out there looking to hear what I do. There's people out there that just pretty much want to hear good music. They don't really care what style it is. So it's a narrow market, and it's never going to be one of the a size of a Britney Spears or somebody like that. But who cares anyway?
True.
Yeah.
I picked up another quote on your website where you said you've only just started feeling in recent times confident about your vocal ability, which kind of surprised me. Why did it take so long for that to happen?
Well, I think singers mature much later than other instrumentalists. I think the voice just, if you're using it right and you're singing well and singing lots, it's a muscle that just really, really gets better with age. And I suppose opera singers might be a bad example because they are opera singers seem to retire at a fairly early age, but other singers, you hear them singing well into their 70s and 80s, and I just think it's a unique thing. It's singers just get better and better if they're singing properly and taking good care of themselves and living fairly well, taking good care of themselves that way. I think it's hard to judge how someone's going to sound when they're in their teens or their early 20s. I think you really have to give them at least another 10 or 15 years before they start coming into their own. I don't know what it is about the voice. It's a unique instrument, though.
It's like a fine wine, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
You've been someone who's successfully combined your music career and a family life over the years. Has there been a key to successfully combining the two?
Boy, it's a tough thing. I could never have done any of this without the help of my husband, who's also a musician and has put his musical ambitions on the back burner because of me. It's tough. It's hard to juggle stuff. It's hard to travel away from your kids, and you never quite feel like you. Sometimes you feel as if you're not devoting enough attention to one side or the other, and it gets frustrating. But I don't think I would have done it any other way, really.
Are there any indications that your daughters will follow your lead into music?
I don't know. One of them is playing piano and is playing guitar. She claims that she doesn't want to play music because she sees how hard it is for us. So, but she'll find out. If she wants to do it, she'll do it, because that's just how it works,
And just finally, Mollie, what's coming up for you on the horizon? Any new recordings?
Well, I'm starting to think about a new one. I don't have a record deal, and I need to really get a batch of tunes under my belt so that I can hopefully find someone that will be willing to put a record out for me. I have a daughter going into college next year, so that's high on the agenda. That's a big, huge thing for us to go through here in our family. And self-producing a CD right now is just not in the picture. I'm not too worried about it. I think when the time is right, the things will come together, and I'll be able to put something out, and hopefully it will make its way to Australia, and you'll hear about it. And,
for sure.
I enjoyed my visits there when I came those 2 times, and it'd be fun to come back.
So you're not actually attached to Sugar Hill anymore?
No.
Okay.
No longer. And by the way, did you talk to Lynn?
Yes.
Or did you
that's all taken care of. That's fantastic. Thanks for that.
Good. Okay.
Terrific. Okay, Mollie, well, look, thanks for your time.
Yes, John.